here. Bye-bye. Marvellous stuff. Right. This is something I'm very, very excited about, and I want to let this lady do the majority of the talking.
Yeah, I'm going to be quiet.
That is a brilliant plan, and I'm going to do likewise. Hatti Suvari really is a pioneer. I was introduced to her by the great Chantal Rickards, OBE, who you all love on a Friday at 12:30. We had a long meeting, and I thought, this is terrific. What a wonderful addition to the lineup on The Daily Show on Men's Radio Station, because my thinking is this: the law is a huge stressor. When you have legal problems, your stress levels can go through the roof. It can be as simple as a irritating next door neighbor, as complicated as a divorce, could be wills. There's a million different things. So every Wednesday at this time, we will be joined by the rather excellent Hatti Suvari. Hatti, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Russ. That was a rather grand entrance for me. Thank you. I don't know if I can live up to that now.
Nothing more than you deserve, Hatti, quite frankly. We've had a lot of correspondence, and, I'm very excited about it. Today's subject, leading beautifully on from Neil's guest of Tosh Britain, who I thought was excellent, and fought her corner admirably, is divorce.
Indeed. And I think, I'm so delighted to be here, and I just really want to get one particular message out to our listeners, to say that we really are going to try to deliver legal information, legal education, in a very simple, plain and English manner. Yep. You touched on something, and you said, the law, it's very important, but it is a sort of, it's not a happy buy, is it? Most people think of the law when they're in trouble, or when there's something seriously wrong and they need help. So I hope that we can deliver tons and tons of legal knowledge in a way which I want to try and make it entertaining as well. Because it is.
I'm not fussed if you don't. I think the thing is that people look at this and they want the legalese, that because lawyers tend to make things as complicated as possible so they can drag it out as long as possible. The notion of you cutting through the nonsense and getting to the bone is key.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's to bring legal education to everyday people. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a legal issue, because some basic understanding of our laws could prevent legal issues. And also it can help you make better informed choices before you get to having any issues. I mean, it is. Yes. And the astonishing thing is, and I do feel astonished every time I say this, is we're not taught the law anywhere.
No.
Unless you electively choose to learn it. Yeah. So I'm delighted to be able to shed some light, bust the myths, break the jargon up, and have a chat about topics that people hopefully can understand on a really simple level. Because
I'm looking forward to this slot as well. You were saying, sorry.
Thank you. No, the legal industry thrives on misery. Let's face it.
It's its fuel.
I mean,
it's fuel really, there.
You're touching on something that relatively recently happened to me, and it wasn't terribly serious, nothing I've gone to prison for, but I did nearly get myself into potential legal trouble, and it's because I did not know the law. It wasn't a question of deliberately breaking the law. I simply had no dealings with it before ever in my life. Plus, I was going through a really stressful situation, and learning complicated new legalese at a time when my mind was grieving and in an absolute mess is really, really difficult. So a bit of, as my dad, bless him, used to say, an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. And I think teaching these basic legal principles, you're right. It could be preemptive, protective.
Absolutely.
What's the word I want? You know what I mean?
Prevention is better than cure.
Preventative. Yeah, sorry.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to bring tons of topics and subjects to this show. And we're starting with divorce because it is a massive topic. And actually, just some stats on it, 42% is the current divorce rate. And it's gone up massively since the pandemic.
Yes.
That's 40 to 50% of marriages ending in divorce. A lot. Big number. The number one reason stated for divorce in the UK is unreasonable behaviour. And I'm sure to each and every one of us, unreasonable behaviour could be in lots of forms and shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Adultery responsible for around 14% of divorces.
So not huge, really.
Yeah,
I mean, seriously, not in the great
No.
scheme of things. Yeah.
No, I agree, Russ. And I found this interesting. The average length of marriage currently in the UK is 11.9 years, which seems like a long time, but really isn't. I mean, my parents have been married for over 50.
Yeah. Train robbers only got 15.
But you get less for murder, I think.
I think you do.
But according to statistics, and the average spend on legal fees to get a divorce is just over £14,000. It's a lot of money.
It's a huge amount of money. And of course, it comes at the worst time. Where if you're going to get a divorce, that means you're going to be looking for a new home and all the additional expenses. And boom, suddenly you're giving, the lawyers a great chunk, which is why what Tosh Britton was saying would be wonderful if it could be implemented, because you would save a fortune.
Well, actually, I just want to make one very, very quick point on your last conversation, because the term common law wife came up. And we will do an episode on this. We will do a show on this because quite simply, and I just want to put this out there, no such thing exists as common law husband and wife.
Precisely as Michael Verby in southern Spain pointed out a moment ago. No such thing as a common law wife, which is the answer
or
to
husband.
Or husband, which is the answer to Francoise Pascal's situation and her question. But I sympathise with Francoise because
I've done podcasts on it. I've done videos on it. The simple reality is, if you don't have a ring on it, you are not considered as common law anything. You must be married or in a civil partnership. So I said, it's very interesting because the unmarried couple is the fastest growing relationship type in the UK. But how many people know that if you're not married, you do not have the same rights as a married couple?
Few, I would imagine, but it's why they probably bring spurious cases thinking they've got right on their side, and they get told, which must be a horrible shock, sorry, you've been with him 20 years. Doesn't mean
it's a huge shock. It's a huge shock.
I was warned about the opposite. I lived with someone for a long time and I wanted to split up with them. People said, be careful, it's going to count as your common law wife. So it wouldn't have done.
No, it wouldn't have done. And that person has, you have no rights over each other's assets that are not in your name, or that you don't have an agreement for, that you may have put together. And let's face it, not many couples say, oh, we're not married, but let's just draw up an agreement to deal with the car and the TV. And the property is obviously the biggest one.
And the dog.
No one's getting
that's another episode.
No one is getting my dog. They will die first. Very, very, very interesting. You see, one of the things you're saying is almost 50% divorce rate in the UK, which exploded after the pandemic. And I guess you think, well, why the hell would I bother to get married? I mean, the odds are not looking good.
It's not a fashionable thing anymore. It's just you look back and historically it wasn't really the done thing to live with somebody and not be married. Now I think in society it really doesn't matter. In fact, I personally would encourage people to live together before they get married to make
before you buy.
Absolutely.
So what percentage did you say was the divorce rate?
Not a Ford Focus.
40 to 50%. It's not a Ford.
I mean, you say 42%. It's bad odds, so let's take the average, 45. But if I went to Vegas and I had a 55% chance of winning the jackpot, I'd say that's fairly good. No.
Well, yes, I get it. But I mean,
that's not really a legal point of view, though, is it? Sorry.
No, but it's a statistic, and I think that works. The divorce process. Now, I know this stuff could be as dry as toast, but one of the most important things to say about this, in April last year, so in April 22, the first changes to our divorce laws came into play after 50 years. And what that was, and two of the main changes was you no longer needed to state the reason why you wanted to get a divorce. Whereas before, on your divorce petition, you had to complete and say at least 5 reasons that a court had to accept was acceptable to get a divorce in order to grant you your divorce. You don't need to do that anymore, which I think is massive.
Has that removed, Hattie, has that removed, this is a huge question,
Blame.
the blame?
Yes, it has.
Is this the so-called quickie divorce? Is that what that means?
No, it's not a quickie divorce. There's no such thing as a quickie divorce, even though people think that that's the case, particularly when it comes to celebrities. Oh, they were able to do things quickly and they were able to get a quickie divorce because they were celebrities. That doesn't exist either. That's a big myth as well, right? But what it's done by taking out the need for parties to say, oh, she didn't care for me, he shouted, he's coercive, he's manipulating, whatever it may be, is it stopped that big fat argument that usually comes the minute the paperwork gets completed. Because what would happen what would have happened is, before April last year, one person would complete the divorce petition and it will land on the doorstep of the other person, and they would open it and say, look what he or she is saying about me. And that would be the beginning of the divorce process.
And Hattie, I describe that as throwing a lighted rag onto a petrol can, because the situation's already really nasty. No, not nasty. Tense,
uncomfortable,
You're
stressful.
Not in a good place. And boom, this arrives. You see it in black and white written down and you go nuts.
Absolutely. So I think that's a great thing that has come in a change. The second massive change that's come to applying for a divorce is you can now jointly apply, right?
Okay.
So instead of one person being the applicant and almost making the other person feel a little bit disempowered because you're the respondent, you're the person being
You're on the
filed.
back foot. Do you feel that you're on the back foot with that? Look, I'm the respondent, not the plaintiff.
Yeah. And then you start hearing the conversations in your circles amongst friends or family saying, oh, she filed for divorce or he filed for divorce. So you can now jointly apply, which is actually quite it's quite a simple process online, really easy to do.
Wow.
For better or worse.
Did you know that, Neil? Neil, did you know that? I had no idea.
No, I didn't.
Wow.
No, the thing is, I can't speak with any experience on this. I've never been married, therefore I've never been divorced. So this is interesting, and it's all news to me as well.
Happy. That's why he's always
so can divorce at its best, if that's the right way of putting it, be cheap, easy, and friendly?
Yes,
and
if the two parties involved are friendly, and it's as simple as that. If
can I
Hattie,
can I jump in? Neil, I want to jump in and say something about you, and it's important. Neil, no, it's a nice thing, but it's important.
Brace
and
yourself.
I think it resonates right through everything we do on Men's Radio Station. As Neil hasn't been married, he has a beautiful daughter. He absolutely adores his daughter, and the love between the daughter and the father is palpable. And when I speak to Neil, who's been a friend of mine for many years and a colleague, the love he has and the emotion is there for all to see.
Yeah, cherish it.
So I don't want people saying, oh, Neil, he's never been married, he doesn't know. No, there is no differential. All it is, as Hattie's already said, is that whoever is your daughter's mum, I've no idea.
I will say that me and the daughter's mum, thank you for that, Russ. Thank you.
No,
me and the daughter's mum
eventually realised. I don't want it being demeaned.
No, but me and the daughter's mum eventually realised that Ashley would benefit a lot more if her parents weren't at each other's throats. And I remember Ashley saying herself years later that it was a privilege for her to have that, and she was really the important one in it all. Because if me and the mum didn't agree on anything apart from one thing, we both agreed that we loved Ashley. So,
well, that's a wonderful thing, and it's a very grown-up thing, and kind of goes back to what Tosh was saying as well. Anyway, there we go.
But it's rare. It's really rare that couples, whether married or not, and I see it all the time. Yeah, but I'm just saying it is rare that you can keep that civil relationship, and I think that a lot of people really miss that trick, if you like, where if you have children, you really need to default to what is best for the children. Is it actually best for the children for us to be at each other's throats? Is it best for the children if I tell my wife or the main carer for the child, you're not going to have the house. I don't care. Go and sort yourself out with somewhere to live. What is best for the children? And I think not enough people who are separating, and I know we're talking particularly about divorce today, not enough people think about that. And I've seen that live in my law firm, where I have to say, well, hold on, when I've got sort of the typical divorce where the husband is saying, no, she's not going to have that 3-bedroom house. I don't give a damn. You know, I paid the mortgage and everything. And I said, well, where are the children going to live with the mother? The mother's a full-time carer to the children because the children are young. And then they'll say, well, and then it all starts, you see, the thinking, you get that thinking. But hats off to you, Neil, because staying civil on any terms, especially when there's a child involved, can be so challenging. It really can. And I know you probably know that firsthand.
As long as the children,
I think for me, the most key thing is not to make the children hostages.
Yes, and use them as tools against your partner.
If there's if there's one thing that really winds me up, it's when people use the children as pawns.
It's awful.
In their arguments.
It's horrible.
Because anything that me and Ashley's mum did has nothing to do with Ashley. How the hell could it be? She wasn't even born.
But Hatti, in your experience, there's two questions. I know you've probably got knowing you because you're so thorough, but I'd like to ask you a couple of questions that may be slightly off piste. Number one, in your experience, which is considerable, are you finding that children are still used as spies? What did mummy do? Who's she with? Did Uncle Fred come round? Are 100%. You finding that?
Yes,
revolting.
The children are being used, because I am seeing in cases where the children should not have a CAFCAS officer have to come across and come along and do a report, where the children should not be dragged into a separate set of hearings to do with access to the children and holidays for the children. You know, parties, understandably, tensions are high, but then they start saying, you're not going away with the children for Christmas, you're not having them for Easter, I'm taking them for summer, and they just get pulled and pushed and pulled and pushed.
Absolutely.
And it is ghastly. And, you know, some situations, you know, there's no smoke without fire, Russ, right? So it's got to be two parties are obviously tugging and pulling and each other. But one of the really important things, and I just want to bring us back to this process of divorce, for people to realize if they're separated or thinking of separating, going through a divorce or thinking of going through a divorce, is it's really, really important to understand there's two aspects to a divorce. Okay, there's two completely separate aspects. The first aspect is dissolving the marriage, which basically means you are no longer married. Easy. That's the easy bit. The second aspect and the most difficult aspect of it, and the most important, because it will affect you for the rest of your life, is dividing the assets and liabilities of the marriage, dealing with who gets what, the finances of the marriage.
Steak knives. It's a family joke. Don't worry about it. Steak knives.
I get it. I get it. But so, yes. So Neil's looking at us thinking, what was that about?
I'll tell you one day, Neil. Not now.
So it's really important that you focus on the finances of your marriage and who's going to get what, because it is going to affect you financially for the rest of your life, whether you like it or not. It's going to affect your children. To me, for the rest of their lives. If you have any.
You know, instead of getting married, why don't you just walk up to a total stranger in the house, just a stranger in the street, just give them your house?
No,
saves a lot of time. Saves a lot of time and aggravation.
Neil, do you think that's helpful? Do you think what Russ is saying is helpful right now?
No, I don't. However, when I was having difficulties a couple of years ago, my mental health was down a bit. I was, as I said, there was almost nearly got myself because I didn't know the law in a bit of a legal tussle. Almost didn't happen yet.
Definitely. Cool.
And I was so down. My attitude was kind of, I don't care anymore. Just take it all. I give up. That much. So I wouldn't say that was helpful. I think you were being a bit funny and facetious, Russ, but at the same time,
not that facetious.
I have felt that way.
I think a lot of people just think, sod this. Now, Hatti, this is coming in from Paul Claridge, but I was actually going to ask you the very same question. Is it true that courts tend to favour the mother when? Can you expand?
Yes, of course. So I was going to mention that point in my myth busting section.
Oh, great.
Okay, so there's so many myths around the law that we could just talk about myths on every show and we'll have a full up show. So people think that the mother automatically gets the children, and we hear the term custody being bandied about a lot. Okay, she got custody, he got custody, I'm going to fight for custody. And then you get a lot of men, I've seen this firsthand, threatening vulnerable women that I'm going to tell social services, I'm going to tell the doctors, the police, and I'm going to take the children from you. So the default position is it's not true that the child automatically stays with the mother, right? The overriding principle always is what is best for the child or the children. Okay, and it's up to each parent if they say, for example, I don't think my child should spend more than 2 days with the other parent. They have to prove and show evidence why that is in the best interest of their child. For example, parents are arguing because they're separated or going through a divorce, and one says, no, I'm not letting you take them away for Christmas. These things end up in court, and you've got judges there having to decide whether these children should go away with one parent for Christmas or not. And the overriding question is, what is best for the child? Is it a good idea for that child to go away for Christmas? 9 times out of 10, it is. Because the argument between parties are not necessarily what's best for the children. It's because of their own challenges and tussles and disagreements.
It all seems rather petty to be asking a judge, can I take my child away for Christmas?
Neil, honestly, if you saw half of it, it is petty, and it's sad because they waste their money doing it, but most importantly, they stress out their children doing it, and they stress out each other doing it.
Because the kid gets to the mindset of this. Well, please correct me if I'm wrong. You're a legal person, and I was. But the kid gets that whatever they do, they're going to disappoint either mum or dad, whatever they do.
Yeah, because they're being,
they can't do right.
It's sad, and one of the things that actually
in the first place.
Exactly.
Say that again. I'm so sorry.
It shouldn't be on their shoulders in their first place. Anything their parents did is nothing to do with them. Like I said about my daughter earlier, they weren't born. How can it be to do with them?
It's not their fault.
No, exactly. And I think the key thing that needs to be taken in consideration if children are being used as pawns against the other partner is the mental strain that has on a child.
Horrible.
Honestly, from the youngest child to early teens, it is so distressing for children to be pulled apart because their parents are splitting up and have split up. It is awful. It's not nice. And I think every time you think you're going to say no to your partner, unless there is a safety concern, a well-being concern, just stop and think, is that the right thing to do? Or am I just taking out my angst of the situation?
I've had conversations with people about this when they've confided in me. And I think sometimes the custody, and that's an interesting word for it, isn't it? Which we had a comment.
Well, here's Dave Sleet's take on that, Neil. Custody relates to prisoners. Excellent.
It's actually an American term. It's actually we are kind of inherited it more from America, the term custody over children. You see it in films, don't you? But
people would confide in me, and I remember thinking at the time the laws are draconian and cruel for all concerned, including the children. And from my point of view, unless there's a well-being concern, unless there's some kind of violence or abuse or something like that, that goes without saying. But apart from that, if the parent is loving on either side, I don't see any good reason why they shouldn't see the children.
Hattie, in your experience, which is huge,
there is none.
3 million downloads on your podcast, for example, so you've got a huge following, and we're thrilled you're here. It's also a lot of spite. In other words, Maureen, the wife, goes off with Tony, the plumber, and they want to go on holiday. And of course, the husband's furious that Tony, the plumber's stepped in. And even though they're probably just having a very nice holiday, he's so angry that he causes, he wants to put an absolute spanner in the works. Do you get that a lot?
You do, unfortunately. And I think it comes from many places. As a parent, there is this sometimes, especially when it's fresh, when the parties are separated, the divorce is not quite finalized, but you know that your partner's got a new partner,
Yes.
or you're just, when it's kind of when the wounds are fresh. And I think when
raw.
Yes, and
raw.
if you haven't moved on to another relationship, I think then it could become challenging to accept that your partner has, and then you think, well, I don't want my children exposed to a boyfriend or a girlfriend on the other side. And then that starts to become issues. But I mean, everybody's situation is unique, Russ, right? Everybody is,
of course.
Everyone's got their story and their reasons. And sometimes you might hear the most craziest situation, but when you go into it and you look at the reasons, you think, well, it's a bit crazy, but I do get it.
Yeah,
I do get it, and I think that when it comes to what's reasonable and what's not, I've been in a courtroom where I look at the judge and I think, God, I wouldn't like to be you today, because the decision that you have to make is not easy, actually.
It's the judgment of Solomon. It's difficult, it's massively difficult.
Exactly. So
and you're dealing with human, you've got the law on the one hand,
human behavior,
and then you're dealing with human. I mean, if it's a speeding fine and you're doing 50 and a 20, it's not an emotional thing. You made a mistake, you're wrong, there's going to be a problem. But when there is love and emotion and the whole of human, that whole human complicated chemistry, very difficult to suddenly bring in accurate laws, isn't it? It's very hard because there's no wiggle room.
Well, this is it. But the law, I guess, will always default to itself to say, right, what's the process in these circumstances? So if you've got a mother saying, I'm not sending my children to the other parent, not doing it, don't care, he doesn't clean them enough, he doesn't, look after them well enough, he doesn't drop them off to club, he doesn't do their homework, that's not going to cut the mustard. A judge is very unlikely to say to you as a mother, well, the fact that he doesn't brush their teeth as well as you do, or assist them to, and dress them as well as you do, and perhaps he's 5 minutes late because of work commitments, then that's a good enough reason to say dad or the other parent can't have access to their child.
But if he was doing something reckless, like, I don't know, driving 120 miles an hour with him in the car, then I could understand that would be a good reason. But not because he doesn't brush their teeth.
Well, but this is it, Neil. People get very highly emotional during separation and even after. And it's very common that one parent wants to dictate what the other parent does and how it's done. And when things don't go to the way they want it to, it becomes a problem. But I think if you're ever thinking of going to court to dispute a children's arrangements, i.e. how much access you're willing to agree with your partner or give to your partner or whatever it may be, just think of this question: what is in the best interest of that child? Is it really a problem that they didn't wear their best outfit when they went to the birthday party, or that dad didn't, really thoroughly get them all
brush their hair? They put on the wrong clothes and they were 10 minutes late. I mean, get a life.
Well, this is it. But coming back to the divorce process itself, I would say focus, if you're thinking of it or going through it, focus on how we're going to divvy this up. And one of the most important things I think people need to think about is you were one as a marriage, right? In a unit, as a married couple, you were one. Half of one will never equals one. So everybody's going to get less, right? And the mindset that people have is, well, I gave her or him the house. She rinsed me. She washed me out. I was left with nothing. Or she says, he took his business that's turning over so much money. I'm left with, just a house. You're going to divide everything in the pot. Everyone's going to get less. And I think the moment you think, well, I'll get comfortable with that, then you can start accepting that your pot that you're going to be left with from the finances of the marriage is going to be less. So just look at how you can agree that.
Because it's when people think, no, I'm going to have exactly the same lifestyle that I have now, and I don't care, you could be running off, but I'm keeping my lifestyle. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because your money's being divided. Get over it.
Exactly.
You've got 25 seconds. I think we're going to have to leave this for next week. What I would love to ask you, we haven't got time now. what to look for in a good lawyer if you're going through this.
Oh,
What are the
God.
good signs and what are the bad signs? But we've only
Oh.
got 15 seconds, so we can't do it. Hattie excelled my expectations, and I thought they were going to be fantastic, even more than I even imagined. I'm so excited about this. Neil's reaction to this has been just what I was hoping for.
It's brilliant. And to answer your question, if you want a good lawyer, I would say go to getlegallyspeaking.com.
Oh my good God!
See,
well,
see Hattie.
well, Red Bar Law is a law firm, but I would just say if you just look for somebody who does fixed fee, because fixed fees help you financially control what you're going to spend. But next week,
there we have to leave it. I'm sorry, because otherwise we're going to have all sorts of technical issues. Hattie Suvari, Red Bar Law.
Thank you.
We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you
Neil
very much.
Neil will be with you on Friday. I have to attend a funeral of somebody very dear
and
special to me. So Neil will be with you on Friday.